My name is Prashanta Khanal and I'm from Clean Energy Nepal. It's a non-profit organization working on environmental issues, and I'm specifically working on this air pollution and urban transportation issues. So today I'll talk about a broader perspectives of transportation, sustainable transportations. So I'll be more focused on urban transportation though, and I'll talk about the principle of sustainable transportations and how it's linked with air pollution. But when we are talking about air pollution and transportations, we often think only about exhaust emission from cars. So it's more than that. So I'll talk about that. So you know that transportation is one of the major contributors to air pollution, and in urban areas, about around 20% of emissions comes from transport sector. So here you can see like the air pollution situation in Kathmandu. You can see that the graph says that it's old data though. It says that like 38% of emission comes from vehicle exhaust. But if you look at the resuspended dust, road dust, so transport contributes around 50 to 60% of PM10 particulate matter in urban areas. So yeah, this is the data from Delhi, where it says like 17% of particulate matter they come from transportation sector. So just talking about the motorization in Asia, Nepal is one of the fastest. It has got a highest rate of motorization than any places besides Laos. Laos it's been like 10 years, less than 10 years. The motorization had started there, but in India, like you can see, like India and Bangladesh, it's like 10% of the rate of motorization is 10%, whereas in Nepal it's around 14% of motorization. So in Asian countries, there's a rapid motorization and urbanization, and Nepal is one of the least urbanized country, but it's one of the fastest urbanizing country in the world. So I'll talk about how we normally do the transport planning. This is a diagram showing that it's a vicious cycle of predict and provide, which means that we predict the transport growth, vehicle growth, then we provide the infrastructure. In this conventional approach, you can see that private vehicle, increases, and which leads to road congestion. You'll see the traffic congestion, and the commission for the study, they says that we got a rapid growth of motor vehicles, so we need to provide more space. Then what the government does is they build more roads, they widen roads, and they build more flyovers. So what happens is when you widen roads, when you build flyovers, you'll automatically attract people to use cars. That's called induced demand. You attract people to use cars. Then what happens is public transport ridership decreases, non-motorized users, the share of non-motorized users decreases because you have widened the roads, which means it's less favorable for public transport user and non-motorized users. It's difficult to walk and cycle. So what happens? Again, the cars and motorbikes number increases. Then this is the kind of vicious cycle of predict and provide, and it has already proven that it won't. This way you can't work. Like Delhi has over like 60 flyovers, still you see the congestion there. So this is also the example of Delhi, and and it's like a multi-lane roads, yeah. But it's still like you'll see the congestion there. So the conclusion is, as Enrique Penalosa says, that trying to solve traffic jams by building more roads, it's like trying to put out fire with a gasoline. So you can't put out the fire with gasoline. You'll attract more vehicles if you build more roads. So this is also an example how conventional traffic engineer, transport engineers see the roads. They provide more space for cars and less space for mass transit, buses, for pedestrians and cycle users. But this is how we actually need to design the city. We need to prioritize less for cars and motorbikes than for the public transportations, walking and cycling. There's no space for building a cycle track. There's no space for building dedicated lanes for buses. But the problem is, this urban transportation problem challenges, it's not about the financial problem, it's not even the technical problem, it's not the space problem, it's about priority and perspectives. Who do we prioritize first? You know, we prioritize pedestrians or we prioritize cars first. So this is a basic approach for reducing air pollution from transportations. This is a basic approach for sustainable mobility. There are 3 approaches. First, avoid, shift, and improve. So I'll talk about this avoid, shift, and improve. Avoid means avoiding the travel. So it's about better urban planning, smart urban planning. It's about better logistic system, green fleet systems. And about shift means you shifting people from riding cars and motorbikes to public transportation, walking and cycling. And improve means you improve the efficiency of vehicles, either be it car or be it trucks or be it buses. It's basically a concept of urban planning where you build denser settlements, urban settlements, where you prioritize, promote mixed use. Then you make the cities more walkable and cyclable. You plan the city around the transit, around the public transportation stations. So you make it more denser. And before we used to have the conventional way of planning derived from American cities and even European cities, like where we plan, like we have a different educational zone, we have different commercial zone, we have a different residential zones. So now urban planners are promoting a mixed-use land planning where you have educational schools in a community where people live. There's a market in that community. So you have all the basic necessities in that community. I'm going to show examples of different cities, different American and European cities, how they have planned. And if you see, don't look at the the legends. It's a little bit misleading. But if you in Detroit, the black line is a central urban core urban areas, commercial districts. So if you look at here where the people usually work the jobs are concentrated here. You can also see some of the jobs concentrated in the suburban areas of Detroit. Yeah, but if you look at here where the people live, actually this is urban sprawl. So they live like the residential areas is scattered all around. Ideally, it should be like where they live should be like where they have their jobs. You know. There's another example of urban sprawl. You can see like in Atlanta. If you see here, most of the jobs are concentrated in the central business district and also in the suburban areas. But you can see like where people live, there is scattered everywhere. So, and there is one example of Portland. These all are like the US cities. Here where they work in the urban core areas. But also if you look at here where most people, also you can see like there are jobs concentrated in the suburban areas. But if you look at and you look at where they live, most of the people live in the urban core areas, and most of the residential areas is also concentrated where the jobs are. There's one data from the regarding the how close people live from their job area. Like if you see at the example of Atlanta, only 9.9% of population live within 3 miles of where they work, and only 35.5% of people live within the area where they work. But if you see at Portland, almost 70.6% of people live within 10 miles, you know, where they work. So when when other American cities were building more roads and flyovers, Portland was actually building more cycle tracks and promoting public transportation. So Portland is people living in Portland, they spend less time in driving and traffic than any other cities in the world. One of the urban planners was saying that because they spend less time in traffic and more time in the recreational activities, actually Portland has more bookstores, they have more breweries, they have more District Plus than per population than anywhere in the world, anywhere in the American cities. So this is just an example of Atlanta. They have done the urban planning around these cars. It's a car-centric urban planning. But if you look at Barcelona, so it's more compact. They have made the city more walkable and cyclable. And here is a comparison between the Atlanta and Barcelona. They both have around same population. They have both cities have like 5 million of population. But if you look at the urban areas, it's almost 12 times. The Atlanta is almost 12 times. Built-up area is almost 12 times than the Barcelona. And if you look at the emission from the transportation sector, like the transportation carbon emission is like, so it's around 7% per capita, whereas in Barcelona it's just like 1 tons per. So how you live in a city will be determined by how your city is designed. Is it designed around cars or is it designed around people? And actually Asian cities are really good. I mean, they have the Asian cities have very high population density per hectare or per kilometer square. If you see Dhaka, it's one of the densest cities in the world. But if you see the Atlanta, you can look at the Atlantas, So Asian cities are still like they have a high population density. It's still we have the compact mixed use urban planning pattern. But what is happening is urban sprawl is expanding in these cities. We are building more roads. We are building more flyovers. So what is happening in all these cities are urban sprawl is expanding. So this is just an example to show how efficient is bus and cycling. You can see that that's the space required for 60 people. If everyone travels in car, and if all the 60 people travel in that bus, and if all the 60 people travels in car, it's the efficient uses of e-space, urban e-space. So actually, we are providing like more space and infrastructure for cars than for people to live in. We are building more parking. We are building more roads. I mean, slowly we are learning. You can see that this is an example of a Seoul city. Before they have got these multi-lane highways, they have got the flyovers, but they later realized that just building more roads and flyover won't solve the traffic congestion. So they have demolished the flyovers and the roads there, and they have actually created that was covered like there used to be a creek there, a small river there, but they covered that river to provide more space for cars. But what they did now is they are providing more space for people. They are also building more bus lanes. They are building more cycle tracks and promoting greenways, walkways around the city. So the result is now this area is 4 degrees Celsius cooler than it used to be. The traffic has improved. There are lots of people coming here for the recreational activities, and actually the retail the land price has increased by 30 to 50% in these areas. So which means that if you build infrastructure around the people, actually it's the retail business, the commercial values of land will increase. We often tend to think that like bigger roads and flyovers will solve the traffic congestion. Of course, they will solve the traffic congestion for 1 or 2 years, but it will be the same after 2 or 3 years. Actually, it will aggravate the traffic. It will produce more toxic gases, more air pollution, more carbon emissions. So what we need is a better streets, not the bigger not the bigger roads. Enrique Penalosa says that there is two ways to destroy the city. Either you bomb it, or you build a flyover, you build the urban highways. That's how you destroy the city. And this is an example of that Seoul. How vibrant is the area. They have provided greenways, so people can come. So I'll talk about the mass transit option now. This is a shift. This is a shift approach. If you build a better public mass transit system, so people will shift from using private vehicles to the mass transit system. So these are the different mass transit options. You have heavy urban rail, you have monorail, you have underground subway, you have light rail transit system, and you have bus rapid transit system. And I don't know if you have heard, there's a concept of personal rapid transit system too. They are testing it now. But I'll talk more about the bus rapid transit system. I'll tell you why we need to focus more on bus rapid transit system than this underground rail, for more importantly for developing countries and cities like ours. Bus rapid transit system is basically you provide a dedicated lanes for bus. But it's not just about providing a dedicated lane, it's also providing a good bus stations where passengers pay. They have a pre-board fare collection system. So you don't pay in the bus, but you pay before you enter the bus. So this is a Transmilenio from Bogota, which has revolutionized the bus system, how we look at the bus system. So it's actually people call it a surface metro. It combines the best features of railway with all these stations, efficiency, with all the information to passengers. But it is very cheaper to build. It's flexible than the railway system. This is a bus rapid transit system of Jakarta. They call it Transjakarta. So dedicated bus lanes greatly increases the vehicle speeds, so it makes competitive car travel. And people prefer using buses than using their cars. So one of the reasons why I'm focusing on bus rapid transit system for countries like even like India, Nepal, Pakistan, it's very cheaper to build. One is if a BRT can be built, the cost to build like 1 kilometer of BRT is just around like 2.5 or 3 million USD. But the metro costs around like 100 million USD per kilometer. So you can see this is the actual figure. Like in 1 billion USD, you can build like 426 kilometer of BRT. So you can almost cover the whole city. But if you are building LRT, light rail transit system, so it's only a 40 kilometer. Even the subway it's very expensive. Its underground metro system is very expensive. With the 1 billion, you can only build like 7 kilometer of subway and only 14 kilometer of elevated railway. So if you look at the Ahmedabad BRT, like 34% of commuters, they have shifted from private vehicles to this bus rapid transit system. So they projected I think it's in 2010, they projected like to reduce 288,000 metric tons of carbon because of the BRT system. So this is the BRT system. It's been like 1 or 2 years. They have even in Karachi, Rawalpindi and Islamabad, they have built a BRT system. I think they have already established like few kilometers from Rawalpindi to Islamabad, and then they are now expanding the BRT system. Yeah. And there are around 8 BRTs in India, around 20 bus rapid transit system in China, around 10 cities more than 10 cities in India are now planning or constructing BRT system. Even the Karachi is planning for BRT system. Even the Dhaka is planning for BRT system. Here you can see the travel mode share of cycling in cities around the world. If you look at Kathmandu, the travel mode share of cycling is just 1.5%. But if you look at the cities in Netherlands and in Denmark, so it's like more than 30% trips are made by bicycle. So Delhi still has like 12% of mod share. So a little bit talk about the policies and infrastructure in Copenhagen, in few European cities. Infrastructure is the key to promote cycling. If you only build roads, it will be more unsafe for cycle users. Actually cycle users decreases while you widen roads because it's more unsafe. So infrastructure is the key thing to promote cycling. If you look at the cycling infrastructure in Copenhagen, they have a really good network. They have almost 338 kilometers of cycle tracks in the city, and they are planning more. They are actually narrowing the roads and providing more space for cycle users. And that's a 40 kilometers of green cycle routes, greenways, mainly built for the recreational activities around parks and around the waterfronts. So in Copenhagen, 37% of travel trips is done by cycling. And how they achieve in 60s and 70s, Copenhagen used to be the same. They have a car-centric planning. They have wide roads. But after the oil crisis in 70s, they have changed their way how they develop their transport system. They have more focus on cycling. So Copenhagen city government is planning to increase the mode share of cycling from 37% to 15% by 2015, and they have prepared the bicycle strategy too. So key to the success of having 36% mode share of cycling is because they have provided a safer infrastructure cycle track for cycle users. So it's an infrastructure planning, and the policies they have adopted. They have integrated cycling not only with the transport policies but also with the health and economic policies. So they found that if people cycle, if their citizens cycle, the nation will actually save money than riding cars. So 20 to 25% of transport budget actually goes to build and maintain cycling infrastructure. So this is just an example of cycling infrastructure of Netherlands and Denmark. Even I mean, there are lots of cycle users cycling in the winter too, in the snow too. So, but when I talk about cycling in European cities, most of the people says that like, we are not a European cities, we don't have money, we can't do what Copenhagen and Amsterdam did. And one of the urban planner from ex-chief urban planner from Vancouver tweeted this, and I really like this. When discussing more about urban biking, I often hear that we are not Copenhagen or we are not Amsterdam. Decades ago, neither were Copenhagen or Amsterdam. Actually, in developing cities like us, in Kathmandu, it's more cheaper to build cycle track than to build flyovers and roads. It's more economical for us. So this is a Strøget cities in 1962. It's a central part of Copenhagen. And in 1986, they started pedestrianizing the same streets in 1965, and now they have like 3 kilometers of vehicle-free zone, completely dedicated to pedestrians in this central of Copenhagen. So we do have pedestrianization in our cities too. Like we have a small section pedestrianized near the Basantapur Darbar Square, but it's just a small section, and it's done for the tourism purpose. And actually, the government of Nepal have planned to pedestrianize these whole urban core areas of Kathmandu in 1969, but it hasn't materialized yet. And also, it's very important how we design our streets. Normally, when we design our sidewalks, a sidewalk is not just for people to go from point A to point B. We should actually design it as a public space where people come to eat, sit, play, So when we are designing a sidewalk, we need to design like, it should have a three zones. Here you can see it's a frontage zones. People can keep their goods. They can have a small table for coffee. And this is a right-of-way for the pedestrian. So, and this is a multi-utility zones where you can keep furniture, you can have greeneries, you can have electric poles. This is how we need to design our sidewalks, not just for people to go from point A to point B, you know. So it should be designed as a public space where even the vendor can. And in Asian cities, in any Indian or Nepalese cities, we look the vendors at a different way. We see them as obstructing sidewalks. But if the government has provided build a sidewalk in this way with a frontage zone, right of a pedestrian zone, and with a multi-utility zone, we actually can accommodate vendors. You know, they provide the basic necessities for the pedestrians. You can buy vegetables there, and also it makes the streets more lively and more safer. Most people, most car users, you know, even the transport planners and experts, they say that they often think that parking is a right. You know, this is an example. This is an illustration from ITDP. You can like providing asking parking space is like, I bought a air conditioner. I need a house to keep my air conditioner. So parking is a commodity. So it's not right. You know, government has no obligations to provide you parking. If the government has no obligations to provide you cars, it doesn't have obligation to provide you parking. But what the government has obligation to provide you a safer mobility, safer, efficient mobility. You know. So if you think like more parking space will solve parking problems, it will solve the urban transport problems. You can see this picture. This is another city, American cities, Houston's. So when you wish for more parking, be careful what you wish for. And also more parking means you attract more cars, attracting more people to drive cars. So you can see that, and it's against the theory of concept of transit-oriented development. You know how efficiently, and parking is one of the most inefficient way to use the urban space. And parking is often subsidized by government. You can Kathmandu is one of the example. So you can see here, but it said that it's a Nisulka parking. It's a free parking for cars. So it means like you are subsidizing car. You are subsidizing the car users. So if car is not a basic need, you know. So obviously that means that parking is also not a basic need. So car users need to pay full price of the opportunity cost, not the government. Opportunity cost means, let's imagine if there is a retail shop there in the space where there is a parking. Actually, government will get more revenue. There will be more economic income. One way to manage parking is by introducing the parking fees. So here is an example of I got this slide from the Paul Barter. He's kind of parking experts, and here you can see it's an example of London. When there is no parking fees, no meters for parking. So you can see like there are lots of cars parking there. It's obstructing the mobility of vehicles, obstructing the mobility of people. And when they introduced a parking fee, it was very low. You can still see parking on the both sides of the roads. I mean, like there are lots of people are parking. But when the price was increased 4 times, so you can even do like kind of timing. For example, in peak hour, in commercial areas, if any people park more than like 1 hour, you can increase the parking fee exponentially, which means that you are discouraging people to park there for a longer duration, because commercial areas is the place where people come, buy and go. You know, that's how you manage the parking. So parking policy is not just about managing parking. It's more about promoting sustainable transportation, sustainable mobility. Parking management should actually improve the walking and cycling condition. It should actually contribute to increase the public transport ridership and reduce traffic congestion, and it should contribute to reducing the dependency on private motor vehicles. The other ways is this is an improved approach where you increase the efficiency of vehicles, you switch to cleaner fuels to reduce the emissions and emissions of air pollution and carbon emissions. So here is this is an example of a BRT system in Argentina. They have actually normally if you see BRT system around the world, most of the buses are diesel buses or CNG buses, but they use trolley buses. They integrated the trolley bus and the bus rapid transit system. Even the I think if I'm not wrong, Argentina has the lowest fuel price in the world, but still they are promoting trolley buses. Yeah, and you can also in Stockholm there is a large fleets of buses run by biogas that was generated from solid waste management. So you'll contribute to the management of solid waste as well as you produce biogas to run the transportation. So you switch from diesel, petrol to cleaner fuels. And this is an electric bus. Normally we think that there are not efficient electric buses. There is not technology electric technology to build to run bigger buses with the battery, but they do have. I mean, it can with a full charge, it can run around 300 kilometers. And most buses in our cities, the daily travel distance is less than 110 or 120 kilometers. A bus, like when they do like 4 or 5 loops in a day in a city, they only cover like 110 or 120 kilometers. So, yeah. And another is a rickshaw. Yeah. If you can improve, rickshaw is actually it's one of the most probably the most efficient public transport system. So this is example of Chandigarh. If you go to Chandigarh Eco Cabs, they have done a really nice job promoting rickshaws, and they have this system called dial a rickshaw system. So people can dial a rickshaw, they can ask rickshaw to come home. You know, it's very systematic. So there are other ways to reduce emissions. One is, for example, carpooling, like, you know, and there are other, like India has prepared they have formulated our fuel efficiency standards in India. So to encourage automobiles and to encourage consumers to buy more fuel efficient vehicles, they have this voluntary fuel economy leveling system too. So consumer can see like which cars are more efficient, which have more mileage. You know, so government of India has planned to increase the fuel efficiency of light duty vehicles cars from 21 kilometer per liter to 18.2 kilometer per liter to 21 kilometer per liter by 2022. So another is stringent vehicle emission standard. So better Euro standards vehicles will contribute. I mean, they release less pollutions. Then there is a green fleet. Truck is also one of the major contributor to air pollution. So green fleet is actually there are lots of aspects to green fleets than just the technology of vehicles. One way is to make the trucks more efficient, more fuel efficient, and also to improve the logistics system. So trucks travels less distance to transport the goods. And there is another one where you can retrofit the diesel vehicles with particulated filter. You know, it can reduce like 95% of, it can reduce up to 95% of particulate matter and black carbon emission. But the problem is it's only applicable for ultra low sulfur diesel. So diesel sulfur content should be less than 50 ppm. There are some cities in India which are already providing this 50 ppm diesel, but in Nepal we still have 300 ppm of diesel. So unless we provide cleaner diesels, I mean low sulfur diesels, we won't be able to use this diesel particulate filter these equipments. So another is like carpooling, and another is eco-driving practice. Eco-driving practice actually means there are lots of aspects of it, but one of the major aspects is like you have gentle driving practices. You don't do like aggressive acceleration and braking. You have the right amount of air pressure in tires. So actually, eco-driving, if we practice the eco-driving, then it can reduce fuel consumption by 20%. There are already examples from cities around the world which have used these eco-driving practices to reduce the fuel consumption. And I'll just talk about a little bit about the role of media, and I want to show some examples how some of the medias are proactively contributing to sustainable cities. And this is one of the campaign from the Hindu, which has launched a campaign called My Chennai, My Right to Walk campaign. And actually, if you go to there, you can see lots of articles regarding the pedestrian woes, problems. They also share the good practices, and even they do the workshop with policymakers and urban planners, transport experts. So if you are involved with any media, you can actually have your own campaign. And I'm not sure, like normally we think that media should be neutral, but neutral doesn't mean like we be neutral to negative, bad things too. The Guardian campaigns against these fossil fuels, they're targeting these big companies, like even the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to actually invest on. They are pushing them to not to invest on fossil fuels. So if you look at the Guardian campaign called "Keep It in the Ground," probably it's one of the most successful campaign on climate change issues. And also, Times of India is supporting the Rahagiri Day. So it's about promoting, awareing people, raising awareness of people to use a sustainable mode of transportation. While walking and cycling, public transportation is important. So they do lots of fun activities, and Times of India is one of the partner of this area. So at last, I want to say that, not me, like Enrico Planlosa said that a city is more civilized not when it has more highways, but when a child on a tricycle is able to move about everywhere with an ease and safety. A city is not civilized like where the poor, you have probably heard that quote. It's not where like poor people uses cars, but it is the civilized city is actually where rich people uses public transportation. So that's how we need to design our city and plan our transportation system. That's all. Thank you.